Welcome to the welcome to the Mobrium webinar for this month. We're going to be covering FTC compliance with employee reviews and how to solicit and market those employee reviews legally. So today we're going to talk about a couple different pieces of legislation that have come out and the history of the FTC. So it'll be a good foundation to give you the understanding of the lay of the land when it comes to legal considerations for that public-facing employee feedback. So just to kind of remind everybody that the Mobrium webinar series is SHRM PDC eligible, so you'll actually be able to earn credits for this webinar as well as our other webinars. So after the webinar, you'll get a link to answer a question of what you learned, and then that displays your activity code. SHRM has actually asked us to have some mechanism for ensuring people are actually participating instead of just like fast forwarding and claiming the credit. So that's why we have a form that just asks you, hey, what did you learn? There's not really a right or wrong answer, but it's just to show that you've been able to participate. All right, so let's start off with what is the FTC? And Emily, have you heard of the FTC before? Did you know much about them?
Yeah, I do know it's the Federal Trade Commission, so that's kind of all I know. I would assume that they make laws about like what companies can and can't do.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. So they were established in 1914, so they've been around for over 100 years now. And their mission is to protect the public from deceptive and unfair business practices and from unfair methods of competition through law enforcement, advocacy, research, and education. So they're the agency within the federal government that helps the marketplace be fair, essentially, to be a police for the marketplace. Their vision is a vibrant economy fueled by fair competition and an empowered, informed public. And just kind of diving a little bit deeper, they have three strategic goals. The first is to protect the public from unfair and deceptive acts or practices in the marketplace. Number two, to protect the public from unfair methods of competition in the marketplace and promote fair competition. And number three, advance the FTC's effectiveness and performance. So they obviously want to use tax dollars as efficiently as possible in fulfilling the mission. And it's interesting, they do a lot as far as research goes. The primary legislation that we're going to look at that came out last year in 2024, they conducted a really in-depth study around how consumers and marketplace players are looking at and using online reviews for decisions and how it's affecting businesses. They actually published a document that was 163 pages long, and it had tons of comments from the public, from research organizations, from industry players, and they took all of that into account, and it helped shape the final legislation that came out. So they're very diligent. They employ a lot of lawyers. They employ a lot of economists and people who conduct research on behaviors that are happening in the marketplace. So really robust organization. And I also saw this, just a random stat, the FTC makes up, I think it was 0.057% of the full federal government workforce. They've got about 1,000-ish employees. So sizable, but small percentage of the overall federal government.
Cool.
Okay, so this is a really important slide. Just taking one step back, the core focus of today's conversation is FTC compliance, but it's also important to realize that's not the only thing that matters. There's also being compliant with the terms of service of the different platforms that we engage with as a business. And they typically fall under these two buckets. You've got customer reviews and employee reviews. So both of these sides of the conversation, we need to be FTC compliant, and we're going to talk about those specifics. But then there are cases in which a platform's terms of service actually are more strict than the law. And an example of that would be on Amazon. It is against their terms of service to incentivize a review. That would be giving money or giving a free product or even giving away an entry to a giveaway in exchange for a review. The FTC does allow you to do that legally if and only if there's a disclosure, meaning right at the top of that product review, it says, I received X, whatever that incentive is, in exchange for my honest feedback, and then you share your review. That's the legal way to provide an incentive in exchange for a review. However, it's against the terms of service for Amazon, which means there is no way to legally incentivize reviews on the Amazon platform.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of an example of that. And we'll dive a little bit deeper on the employer side as well. But yeah, so we need to care about both sides. So any questions yet, Emily, or doing good?
Doing good so far.
Okay. So next we're going to take just a high level look of the several different pieces of legislation that have come through over the years, and then we'll talk about each of them. So the first one is the FTC Act. This was essentially when the FTC was organized way back in 1914. We're not really going to talk about this in depth, but essentially it outlines that you can't have unfair or deceptive business practices legally, like saying that you're going to give someone product A if they buy product B for free, and then you don't. Like, that's just lying. Like, there's some common sense things that came through with that first legislation. Then the next really big one that came out was in 1980 was the FTC's endorsement guides. And essentially this one outlines transparency with endorsements. It talks about expertise and having individuals that are claiming they're an expert for a certain field. They have to disclose that if they're not, and if they're getting paid. Like, we'll take a little bit deeper dive in this one, but it's transparency around endorsements, celebrity endorsements. And then it was revised in 2009 and again in 2023 to cover more modern forms of endorsements like bloggers, social media influencers, reviews, and that sort of thing.
Gotcha.
The next one was the Consumer Review Fairness Act. This one came out in 2016, and it basically establishes consumers' right to share their honest feedback and reviews in line with freedom of speech. So we'll look at that one. That one's actually pretty simplistic and straightforward. And then the last one that we're going to be focusing on the most is this recent legislation that came out. Oh, and I have the date wrong on there. I'll fix that, but it's 2024. This trade regulation around consumer reviews and testimonials. And it talks about fake reviews, incentivized reviews, different forms of review manipulation, and outlines them with greater detail and increases the civil penalties substantially. They went all the way up to $51,744 per violation. Yikes. So it really gives the FTC reins to hammer down on this topic. And in my personal opinion, I haven't seen them go crazy hard after every single little mom and pop shop out there. But if they find like a habitual bad actor that's really breaking the rules, then they will make a case out of them, essentially. Gotcha. So that's what's going on there. Okay, so next, it looks like we had another friend join us here. So thanks for joining, Amikwa. We're glad that you're here. We're just now jumping into the several different pieces of FTC legislation that impacts online reviews, and we're going to look at each of those in depth here. Okay, so the next one, the first, well, so we're skipping this FTC Act because it's more generic around deceptive business practices, and then we're going to look at these three right here. So the endorsements guide came out in 1980 and then revised 2 times. This is a high level of the do's and don'ts. Essentially, we want to disclose material connections. Everything around endorsements when it comes to any form of advertising, including online reviews, really it's just about transparency. Let's say you were shopping for some slippers on Amazon and there's 50 different reviews from people that all received those slippers for free. And of course, they love them because they got them for free. You, as the consumer, you'd probably want to know that fact that all of those people received the product for free. And so that's why the FTC requires a disclosure of material connection. And it's not just receiving the product for free, but it's also if you're an owner or an employee of the company, that could materially affect how you make a purchase decision as a consumer to know that information. So we also want to ensure endorsements are honest and reflect real experiences. So this would be something like if we collaborated with a celebrity or social media influencer and they hate our product or they hate our company, and it could even be an endorsement from a company culture perspective, like maybe we collaborate with a business leader like Gary Vanderchek or some of the more prominent business thought leaders and like Simon Sinek, and they make a statement that says, hey, this company has a great culture. They're a great place to work. If they don't actually believe that personally and they haven't had a real experience with the business, then that's not truthful or honest. And so it would break the endorsement guide. So the person that's making the endorsement, whether it's in a review or a testimonial or a commercial or whatever, it has to be truthful and real. And then you have to, number 3, ensure that those claims can be substantiated. And with iFit, Emily, maybe you've heard a little bit about this, but fitness and nutrition and health and wellness, healthcare, those industries, this affects them a lot. Because if you were to say, look at this pill that helps you lose weight, so-and-so just lost 50 pounds. If that's not actually true, or it's not an average expected user experience, then we can't use that experience in an ad because it's not the typical experience, or we have to at least be able to back it up. The best thing to do is to use the average expected experience in marketing claims. So if the average weight loss is 10 pounds, even though Susie lost 50, and that's a real experience, we wouldn't want to use that in advertising because it's not the average expected results.
Right.
Number 4, we just want to monitor endorsements and reviews and have some process in place that's reasonable to check for breaches of FTC legislation and then take corrective action to fix those. And then on the don't side, we don't want to hide disclosures. We don't want to tell people that are leaving reviews to hide certain things. And we don't want to use endorsements that mislead. We can send you in the follow-up email, we'll send you links to all of these so you can dig a little bit deeper, but this is just kind of the high level to help you be compliant. The next one, the Consumer Review Fairness Act. Essentially, this is making it so you cannot put in a contract that a customer or an employee is not allowed to write a review. So we would not want to put any form of a clause, and this actually directly affects HR for employment contracts.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you had a statement in your employment contract, a non-disparagement contract that says you're not allowed to post anything negative online about the business. You would be able to legally say or limit your employee from sharing or confidential, but you would not be allowed to prevent them from leaving an honest review online. So we would not want to put that in any contracts. Any questions up to this point? We're about to get to the last one that has probably the most meat. Doing good? Yeah. All right. So the last one here is the legislation that came out last year, 2024. And let me see here. Okay, so we'll just go through the do's and don'ts. So ensure that reviews are truthful and based on real experiences. So we're not allowed to share fake reviews that are generated by AI, essentially, or individuals that are selling reviews. And we need to disclose any material connections that they essentially bolsters up their references around the endorsements piece. And then we need to make sure that reviews reflect typical consumer experiences, honest reviews, substantiated claims. A lot of this is very similar to what has already been said in the previous legislation, but they just became even more specific in their examples. And so they talked about not creating or purchasing the fake reviews, don't hide or admit disclosures or material misrepresentations, claims that can't be substantiated, and don't ignore or leave misleading reviews unaddressed. So we have to have a way to track those. So what I wanted to do next was actually just take a look at the actual pieces of the legislation. So this first one, it's titled Section 465.2, and it specifically lists that it is deceptive or an unfair business practice for a business to create, buy, sell, or share fake reviews. And for a review to be real, it has to meet 3 pieces of criteria. The reviewer has to be real, so it can't be a review generated by AI, a bot, or someone that's selling reviews. The reviewer must have a real experience with the business, so it can't be someone who's living in New Jersey writing employee reviews or product reviews for businesses all across the country that they've never actually interacted with.
Right.
And the review must be focused on the actual product, service, or business. And that one may feel a little bit weird, but there's something called review hijacking. And that's where it mostly happens with e-commerce reviews. It could actually happen with product reviews in the case of an acquisition. But essentially, let's say you're selling a toaster on Amazon. You've got 4.7 star average with 10,000 reviews of a toaster on Amazon, and that toaster is being discontinued. And then you repurpose the product listing, and now you rename the product as a vacuum, and you're selling a vacuum through that listing, and you have all these toaster reviews. That those could not be used in that application. That would be a form of review manipulation where you've essentially hijacked reviews from one product and now you're applying it to another product to keep that sales momentum and the star rating and the number of reviews to benefit sales of a different product entirely. With employee reviews, it's possible for that to happen in the case of an acquisition where you've got star ratings and reviews from another company, they get acquired, they merge into the parent business, and now it's a fundamentally, different business, different operations. I haven't actually seen that example specifically, but it does kind of fit that. So it would be something that we could help you through on a case-by-case basis if you're dealing with acquisitions or anything around that, what to do with your employee reviews. So as far as how this applies to employee reviews, don't buy, create, or sell fake employee reviews, because you could do this even though it's illegal. You could go to Fiverr and find someone who's willing to make a bunch of profiles and claim their employees and write reviews. That could get you some pretty significant civil penalties from the FTC. So only ask for reviews from your actual employees. But there's a piece to this that a lot of companies we talk to miss. You are legally allowed to, and you should, ask for reviews from contractors, interns, advisors, anyone who's contributing to the business. They don't have to be a full-time W-2 employee to qualify for the opportunity to leave a review. When you go to like Glassdoor, for example, if you just go to write a review of your company, you'll see the different drop-down options that they provide. And they have employee, intern, contractor, and several additional drop-downs that are, and the reviewer can select the one that's most applicable. So the key here is to ask for as many reviews from your team members as possible, but don't try to get fake ones. The next piece of this legislation, part 465.
Can I ask a quick question about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. So we're just like now acquiring like a new brand. Would you say like best case scenario is just not to bring those, like say if they have like their own Glassdoor, would you just not want to bring those two companies together? You'd want to just let the old one kind of like remain its own entity?
You can. Glassdoor specifically has a feature called nested profiles.
Okay.
So you can have the parent company profile and then the like sister companies essentially underneath that. So you can go to the parent company and click to the additional company profiles that are associated with the parent company, and they remain separate, but they're connected, they're linked. It kind of depends on how the business decides to incorporate the new business into overall operations. If they're wanting that business to have its own brand in the marketplace, to have its own employments, like if that business is going to hire employees on its own under their business name and keep it, I would say keep their business profile separate. If they're going to be enveloped in the parent company, you probably just want to merge everything into one profile and eliminate the profile of the one that's being acquired. But we can even dive a little bit deeper on a separate call, Emily, and go through the exact specifics. But that's kind of a general answer I would give.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Great question. And that one comes up a lot more than you think. So the next one here, and Amikwa, if you've got questions, feel free to jump in. No pressure there. Part 465.4 of this new legislation, it says you cannot provide compensation or do provide compensation or incentives in exchange for reviews expressing a particular sentiment. And it looks like I put a typo on that. It's supposed to say don't. So to be very clear, don't provide compensation or incentives in exchange for reviews expressing a particular sentiment. So this is interesting because legally you can say, please leave us a 5-star review. I would never recommend doing that because it feels inauthentic to your customer base and to your employees. I would always recommend asking for an honest review. But if you were to provide any form of compensation for any type of review, it's illegal to ask for a review expressing a particular sentiment. And you may be like, well, what's the negative doing there? Well, that's because there have been cases of people paying other people to go leave negative reviews of their competitor to damage their business, which in turn would help them. So that would be a deceptive or unfair business practice. So how does this apply to employee reviews? Do not incentivize employee reviews ever, even though the FTC says there's a way to do it with the disclosure and not asking for a particular sentiment. It's actually against Glassdoor terms of service and for some of the other profiles. So if you were to give any form of incentive in exchange for employee reviews, that would break the terms of service and could put your entire presence on Glassdoor in jeopardy. So we just simply don't want to do that at all. We just want to ask for honest feedback. And if we ask all employees, the message to employees is everyone's voice matters, everyone is heard, and we care about hearing your perspective. Please share. That type of messaging is going to buy more trust from your employees and benefit of the doubt too. Maybe not everything's perfect in your company culture, but the employees see that you're taking action to change certain things and you're listening to them. That's really going to help them want to stay longer and see the progression of culture change. Okay, so we're almost done here. The next one, part 465.5, is about insider reviews. Essentially, reviews from officers, managers, employees, even immediate family members must have a disclosure of material connection. So this doesn't apply really to employee reviews, because when you go leave a review on Glassdoor or Indeed or Comparably or in her site, it's already tagged. It says current employee, former employee, right? Like it's transparent as is. So there is no labeling that needs to happen, no disclosure that needs to happen with employee reviews. But if you have employees leaving a review of the business on Google or a recommendation on Facebook or Yelp or Amazon or anywhere else, they do have to disclose that they're an owner, a manager, employee, or even an immediate family member of someone who works there, because that could affect how a consumer views that review. And there has to be transparency in advertising, and reviews are a form of bad advertising. What would get you in big trouble is if you knowingly had a review from an employee that was picture perfect, glowing review, it did not have the disclosure, and then you take that review and you put it in an ad. Anytime you take a review and put it in any form of advertisement, it's as if you're claiming those things as a business. And the FTC outlines that as well. So that would be like a double no to do that. They do have an exception if a business has mechanisms for asking for reviews as part of a purchase flow, and those are automated and they're just going out to every person that buys something. Those reviews would be exempt from the disclosure because they were acquired through a regular review collection process. And an example of that, I keep referencing Amazon because it's a really easy one that everybody knows. But if Amazon employees are buying products on Amazon and they're getting an automated review request to leave a review of a product on Amazon, those specific reviews would be exempt because they were collected through Amazon's regular process of review solicitation. Okay. So let's see, we've got, I think, one more. This is the last one. So 465.7 is about review suppression. We cannot use threats to prevent reviews from being created or removed. We also cannot claim that a subset of reviews represent all of them. So that would be, maybe you have 1,000 reviews on Glassdoor, and you're sitting at a 4.3, but you filter the reviews by your corporate headquarters, and that's 500 reviews, and it's 4.7, you could not put on your career page 4.7, 500 reviews, and insinuate or claim that that's all the reviews and that's how satisfied people are, because that would be some form of suppression. You're excluding the rest of them. You could legally say 500 plus 5-star reviews, because you're not making any claim to all of the reviews or them existing across all locations. So that's typically what we recommend. If you don't have a star rating that you're really proud of, count all of the 5 stars, and that can be a focus on the positive. It's also evergreen. You don't need to go back and change that. You probably would want to increase that number after you've collected more 5 stars, but you could say 500 plus 5-star reviews from current employees or something like that. So how it applies to employee reviews, as far as employment contracts go, or even managers or HR or leaders talking to team members, do not threaten employees to not post, to edit, or remove employee reviews. I would say it's not even worth trying to identify who wrote a review. It's best to strategically respond to those negative reviews and address claims made, and then offer for them to contact you directly to continue the conversation. But we have a separate training that goes deeper into how to reply to review in Mobrium Academy. But that's a whole additional topic. Do not threaten employees to remove reviews or to not post them. It's best to just simply focus on asking for honest reviews from all employees to maximize the volume of reviews we can get on a continuous basis. Okay, so this is kind of the end here, but I just wanted to bring up one really important piece. This training may feel like, okay, so there's some things that were directly applicable to what I do in HR, but a lot of this felt very not applicable with Google reviews or other platforms reviews. Well, HR is the department within an organization that houses policies, company policies. So some of this applies directly to what you're doing and not doing with employee reviews, but it's also critically important to have policies in place to help your business be completely FTC compliant when it comes to any type of review, so your employees are trained and know what to do and what not to do to be compliant. So I guess the reflection questions are you aware of anything right now that should be addressed or should be changed? And you don't need to answer that, because we don't want any like self-incriminating comments here on the webinar, but just think about, maybe you know of something in the marketing department that you just realized maybe it's not fully compliant. And then are you proactively asking for employee reviews? To help you take action, we've actually built a template company policy for you for online reviews and testimonials, and we're going to send that in the follow-up. So you can take that, adapt it to your business, talk to your legal team to make sure. Obviously, we can't provide you legal advice, but we're very informed in this space, and it will give you a good starting point for a company policy that you can add to your handbook to ensure compliance. And you may even want to have a training or an email that goes out to your workforce around some of these points, around specifically with the disclosures, if they're choosing to go leave a review on Google or other platforms, to disclose that they're an employee, and specifically to managers to not ask employees to do that without a disclosure, because that would be a double no-no for a manager to purposefully try to avoid disclosures. So just to close it up, we're here at Mobrium to help with anything that you ever need when it comes to navigating FTC compliance or dealing with a really difficult review that's been posted. Our calendar link is right there. You can also scan that QR code to grab a time to connect with us. We'd be happy to talk through anything that you're dealing with. And we're also happy to do a deeper dive into your reputation and do an audit of how things are going and help you get some greater visibility to some things that you may or may not have seen. And then the very last thing, just before opening it up to any final questions, to give you a heads up on the next event. We're really excited for this one. Elisa Garn is a good friend of mine. She's actually one of our advisors at Mobrium. She's a very experienced HR professional with a wide range of experience with business leadership, HR leadership, a very people-first leader, and she's actually talking about the shift to skills-first workforce. So not focusing as much on the resume, but focusing more on the abilities and skills of employees with hiring and with your existing workforce to be more agile and sustainable in your business practices. So really excited for that one next month. We'll send a link out to register for that, but you can always find our next webinar registration on mobrium.com/webinars. So I'll just pop back to this page and open it up. Emily, Amikwa, any last questions or thoughts that you've had?
Not really. I guess, is there like, so sometimes iFit will give like equipment away as like a present to our employees. Would that be something that they can't leave a review on, or would they have to disclose that they're leaving a review on a product they didn't buy?
So yes, they can leave a review, but they do have to disclose that they're an employee and they received it for free.
Okay.
So that would be the way to make it fully compliant. Yep. And the FTC, if you want to get really specific here, they define what that disclosure needs to look like. And there's several bullet points under the label clear and conspicuous. So the disclosure has to be impossible to miss, essentially. They can't just like bury it in the middle of one big paragraph and it's really difficult to see. Even though it's technically there, it wouldn't actually meet the definition of a clear and conspicuous definition or disclosure. So I can kind of highlight that for you on a separate email for that exact use case. But yeah, there is a way for them to do that. They just need to disclose it properly. Great question,
Thank you,
Emily.
Matt. I don't have any questions right now.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
thanks for joining us, Amikwa. Super good to have you here, and hopefully you got some good insights. We'll send the recording out so you can get the whole thing, and there's a link to claim those SHRM PDC credits as well. So
Awesome. Thank you so much.
yeah, thanks for joining, everyone, and until next time, we'll see you next month, and appreciate you being here with us.